All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Grants Committee meeting. Just going to open the meeting with the karakia. Whakatakata hou ki te uru, whakatakata hou ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. I hi aki ana te ata kura, hi tio, hi huka, hi hauhu, ti hei moriora. It's good to see you all here, and we've got Democracy Services Advisor Emily Deans helping us for the first time today. So thanks, Emily. I've already warned her that I'm not the most accomplished online chair, but we have many other accomplished online chairs present today, so I think we'll be fine. We do have some apologies. We've got apologies from Andy Foster and Nicola Young for lateness. So I'll move that the apologies be accepted. Have we got someone? And Jill will second that. So if you could just vote in the normal Zoom way. Thanks, everybody. That is carried. We'll just now move on to conflict of interest declarations. Do any councillors have any conflicts of interest in relation to items on the agenda? No, thank you. All right, I'll just move on then to the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting that was held on 1 December 2021. They've been circulated and I move that they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. I'd ask you all to vote for that as well. Lovely. Thanks, everybody. That's carried unanimously. Now we move on to public participation. We have three public participants, or three groups of public participants today, starting with Jenna Williams, Rena Day and Joseph Pagani from the Wellington Chamber of Commerce. Now you guys have 10 minutes and if you'd like to allow some time for questions within that, that'd be great. But we can be a bit flexible because we don't have a very heavy agenda. So welcome and look forward to hearing from you.
Kia ora koto. Thank you, Flora, for your lovely introduction. I'd like to first of all begin just by introducing my colleagues, Jenna Williams and Joseph Pagani. Joseph is our Policy and External Relations Advisor, and he looks after the government relations advocacy, analysis of government policies and communication to media and members. And Jenna Williams is our Programs and Sustainability Advisor who made the application possible. She studies sustainability as part of her biology and psychology degree at Victoria University, as well as completing sustainability training with us at Business Central. And she also works alongside Business New Zealand as part of their advisory sustainability network. And she will be doing our presentation today as she is our project lead on this exciting application. So I'm going to hand over to Jenna. Thank you.
Kia ora, Rena, thank you. Ahi ahi Mārie, ko Jenna tuku ingoa. As Rena said, I'll be presenting our project for the sustainability fund that you guys have going. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Cool, so this is what we'll run through today. I'll briefly touch on our own sustainability journey and our purpose as Wellington Chamber of Commerce, and then we'll go into a bit more about our sustainability bootcamp, the proposal we're putting forward, including a breakdown of the different sessions and the budget at the end. And yeah, we'll have any questions at the end, so if you think of some, we'll address those later. Next slide, please. Cool, so the Wellington Chamber has been Toitū Carbon Zero certified since 2016. So since then we've been actively measuring and reducing our carbon emissions and then offsetting any that we haven't been able to eliminate. You can see from this table here that since 2016 we've managed to reduce our emissions by 17.23 tonnes. Obviously with COVID interruptions, as everyone has experienced, more working from home, there's been quite a drop over the last couple of years, hoping that we can maintain this lower level in the coming years as well. If we jump to the next slide, there's a bit more of a breakdown of where we're currently sitting in our sustainability journey. So our biggest emitter at the moment is domestic air travel from the learning and development courses we provide throughout the regions. But we have managed to reduce this by 33.5% since our baseline in 2016. So this kind of shows that we are committed to our own sustainability journey and the new position of Sustainability Advisor was created in the last 6 months, which has allowed us to grow internally in the sustainability space. And now we feel like we're in a position ready to get our members along and the public along for the sustainability journey as well. So if we go to the next slide, please. So our purpose at Wellington Chamber is to support, facilitate and represent Wellington businesses. So with this purpose in mind, we thought of the project that we're putting forward to you guys, partnering with different sustainability specialists in the Wellington region, as well as using our learning and development capability, and then overseen by myself as the Sustainability Advisor, we're putting forward our Sustainability Bootcamp. Next slide. So the overall aim of this bootcamp is to equip businesses, especially we're targeting small to medium-sized businesses, with the tools that they need to begin their own sustainability journey. Overall, hoping that we're leading towards that net zero carbon economy by 2050 that Wellington City Council has put out as our goal. And along with this, we're hoping that we're going to create a community of climate action champions and leaders that can work together, feed off each other and give each other support going forward to try and meet this goal. Next slide. So touching on that community focus again, our partners at Te Awe Māori Business Network are helping to co-create this project and to ensure that we are being as inclusive as possible with all communities. We highly intend other small to medium Māori-owned businesses to participate in our event as well and benefit from this project. With our large range of members, we've got a lot of different industries, so there is a wide, diverse range of people that this will be open to. But in saying that, it's not just for our members, anyone in the public can access it too. And as I touched on before, we are aimed at small to medium-sized enterprises, as we believe these people might not have the resources that they need to tackle their sustainability journey. I do see some hands up. Do you guys want me to approach the questions now?
No, you just carry on and then we'll get to you.
Cool. Next slide, please. So here's a bit of a breakdown of our Sustainability Bootcamp proposal. I'll go into each session in more depth in the coming slides, but you'll see that it's a hybrid model of some in-person and some webinar structures. So it is really flexible, say COVID persists. We can switch everything online, which is good, but hoping that we'll be able to do the in-person sessions, which will be here in our CBD office. So this is learning cohort 1 starting in May, going through to around June with some extra contact towards December. And then we're hoping to run it again in October. So across the year, we'll have 2 different cohorts, each cohort about 20 businesses, we're hoping. So I'll kind of run you through each of the different sessions now in the coming slides. Next slide, please. So to ensure that we are meeting the participants' needs, as well as to prove to you guys that the funding has come to benefit the Wellington community and businesses particularly, we're doing a bit of a pre and post bootcamp survey. So at the start, this first survey will be assessing a general understanding of sustainability of the participants, and they'll also set some learning goals for the coming sessions. So they'll be given the learning outcomes of the 6 sessions that they'll come to, set some goals that then they'll reflect on in that post bootcamp survey. So this will kind of keep them accountable and also allow us to see whether what we've produced has been beneficial and any ways that we can alter it in future cohorts. And then 5 months after the event, we'll check in again. So there will be a one-on-one with me where we'll set a bit of a plan for that one individual. And then this 5-month survey is checking in again to hold them accountable to their goals and make sure that they're heading on track to where they want to go. Next slide, please. So the first session of our bootcamp will be approaching the bicultural understanding of sustainability. Titu is our Te Reo Māori teacher, so he's going to come in and for an in-person session, approach sustainability from a Mātauranga Māori lens, ensuring that people are looking at it from a holistic view and right from the get-go, this is at the top of their mind. Next session, please. So session 2 will be a webinar from the Sustainability Trust, which is the CBD Eco Centre here. They're going to come in and talk about behaviour change and how you can really make sustainability sustainable in your business and ensuring that that change is going to last. Next session, please. ECOS is a carbon emissions management service provider. They are Wellington based, and they're going to come in for 2 sessions in the boot camp. Their first session here will be addressing a bit of a basic understanding of the climate and what role emissions reductions have in this and how, even what they are. Some people might not know that basic understanding, so this will kind of give them that level standing there. And then in the following session, I'll talk about what they will come in to do. But between their 2 sessions, participants will be asked to go back to their organisation and give a rough measurement of their carbon emissions, use the ECOS calculator so that they can come to the next session with a bit of a number that they can work with. Next slide, please. For session 4, it's another webinar style session with EcoGeek, who offer low carbon sustainable technology solutions. So hopefully this session will give people some creative ideas on how they can switch away from fossil fuels and reduce their carbon emissions in their office space or in their workspace, whatever is suitable for them. Next session, please. At session 5, we have Wellington City Council yourself coming in to give our businesses an understanding of what does a sustainable Wellington City future look like and how can the business community help them, help you, sorry. So ensuring that we are meeting that net zero 2050 goal, giving a good idea of how businesses can contribute towards this. Next slide, please. And the last session of the bootcamp is this ECOS group again. So here this session will be an in-person, which is going to be really practical and personalised so that every participant will come away with some real solutions for their own organisation to tackle some of their carbon emissions. So hopefully by the end of the 6 sessions, they'll have had a lot of different viewpoints, different approaches, and also come away with some real goals and ideas for how they can implement this into their workplace straight away. Next slide, please. So that's the bootcamp chunk of our project. 1 month following this, we want to check in again and make sure that our participants haven't just come through the project and forgotten everything. So we're going to come in and I'll do a one-on-one video call with every participant and we'll set a bit of a plan for the next steps. So in this stage, the participants and I will chat through what they learned and what they want to do going forward, and I can refer them on to any support or resources that they need.
We just did a bit over 10 minutes, and I know there are some questions, so I'm just wondering if you could wrap up now, and we'll go to some questions if that's all right.
Absolutely. This is pretty much my last slide, so
cool.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up there. So hopefully this whole sustainability bootcamp will help our Wellington businesses start their sustainability journey and get that carbon zero future.
Thank you very much. And if we maybe can go back to the other screen without the screen share on, so we can see, we've got a few questions there. We do have a bit of time, so I think it is worth going through them. Councillor Day.
Kia ora. Thank you, Tina, for sharing that with us. It sounds like a really awesome kaupapa. My question's around how you feel the uptake from businesses will be, given that we're hearing that they're fairly stretched and stressed with the impacts of COVID. So you've sort of counted for how people can interact with it, which is really good, being able to be flexible and that sort of thing. But do you get a sense from members whether there will be interest in uptake at this stage, given that many are just trying to survive at the moment?
Sure, Jill. Thank you for that question. We believe there'll be a really strong uptake because we regularly survey our members, and we also regularly survey those members who attend professional development with us. And we've had numerous requests from them to provide some kind of learning in this space. And so this is, we know that there will be a genuine uptake because we already have about 15 businesses on file who have requested. So at the moment, we really do understand that businesses are stressed, so which is why that we're pushed out the delivery date is a couple of months out, and we really do want to make sure that we're using as much time as we possibly can to make sure that we're advertising as much as possible, and also spending time contacting our businesses to gather that interest. But really valuable question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena.
And Councillor O'Neill.
I think Councillor Matthews was ahead of me, but happy to. No?
Not on my screen.
I'm next, Fleur.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the Chair's ruling on that one. Yeah, Jenna, that is amazing. And my question is, I guess, to the overall strategy of the Chamber of Commerce. What happens if you get businesses coming back with their learnings, saying that they want the Chamber of Commerce to take more action on climate? I'm just noting, if we're training businesses to be stronger actors, what are you doing to support projects around the city that will reduce our climate impact? I guess the politics and the optics of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, did you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. Ultimately, the organisation reflects the views of our members. So depending on what they come back to us with, if they have specific requests for policies, and that's absolutely our role to reflect that in our advocacy. I would say that I do think we already support the net zero Wellington by 2050 policy, and I think across our advocacy support a number of means of how to get there as a chamber. So I saw a lot of you last week when I spoke in support of the district plan and its transition to denser housing and elements like that I think will reduce our carbon emissions throughout the city. But as things change and the views of business change, whether or not because of this course, then our role is absolutely to reflect that.
And just from an L&D space, we have a 3-year cycle of planning and propagation about what our businesses are telling us that they need to be focusing on. And so we would automatically build in that after the program that we also try to generate further support and further expertise training in that space as well.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Yes, my question, first of all, I think the program looks excellent, so well done for your work and thank you for the presentation, Jenna. My question is along similar lines to Councillor O'Neill, but I guess taking it a little bit further, that, is the difference of, doing sustainability boot camp for business that is potentially making less of a difference than our efforts to decarbonise our transport system, which the Chamber has largely been critical of, advocated against, anything that we're changing around car parks, making more public space for people and for public transport, and all of those things. So I'm just kind of saying, asking about the consistency of those two positions, and wouldn't actually supporting us to reduce our emissions through greater use of active and public transport actually make more of a difference?
I can take that again, Jenna. And also I think a really important question, because these things should be reflected across an organisation like the Chamber, and that's also reflected, I think, in the internal figures that Jenna showed of us becoming a carbon zero organisation too, and reducing our own waste. You want these things to carry throughout the organisation. I think we have healthy disagreements with council policy on some of these issues. But as I say, we support the net zero target, and throughout past efforts around council transport, we've had disagreements, but I think always with the mind towards that being our future. We have always supported forms of rapid transit, for example, through let's get Wellington moving. And while we may disagree with the program on how best to implement those forms of rapid transit, we, for example, we're very early advocates for the inclusion of bus rapid transit at Wellington. That goes back, I think, our advocacy on that to 2013, and other options around that. Other things like electric cars. You know, you can agree to disagree on the value of those things, but I do think we very much have a view that a carbon zero economy is coming to Wellington, and we need to prepare for it as a city. The other flip side of that is, even when we do disagree with the council on all of it, it is happening, and our businesses need to get ready for it, and they need to be a part of it. And fundamentally, for the change towards a net zero environment to come, that needs to come predominantly, because most of Wellington's economy is business, and needs to come from business. And so preparing them to adapt and to reduce their carbon emissions will have a flow-on effect throughout the entire economy.
Finally, thank you for that question, Councillor Matthews. Education is at the heart of everything that we do. That is our purpose. And so if we want to begin that transition to change, we need to make sure that we're providing really robust education for our businesses. And this grant application is completely about that starting point of education, and making sure that we are really proving that we can do for our businesses the best that we can, in terms of giving them a really good foundation program in how helping them to get on this journey when they possibly may not be able to afford that. So that's, I guess, our impetus around all of this.
Well, thank you. And look, we do have 2 more questions, and I will allow them even though we're well over time, but can I just encourage both the people asking them and answering them to be succinct? So Councillor Foon.
Okay, I'll keep mine really quick. Open source, are you going to make the outcomes of this and the processes open source for all members? Will you measure the impacts and make those public? And what size businesses are you really targeting, and will they be local?
Okay, absolutely. I'll go to the third part first. That's the quickest. Absolutely. Up to businesses up to 20 people are our main target areas. That's the first thing. Secondly, yes, we would be happy to make public the findings from this. We think it will be something to celebrate. We, of course, we want to be able to provide you as our providers with really good, robust data. And so, yes, we'd go first to you, and then, of course, we would take it further. Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Young.
Okay, so apologies for lateness, but a water mains crisis in my street. Have to inform the neighbours. So just looking at your expenses, it just seemed to me there was a figure, I think it was 5,500 for media work, and including quite a lot of social media. It just seemed like rather a large sum. Bearing in mind much of social media is very inexpensive.
I guess what we wanted to do was to use platforms such as LinkedIn to advertise and things like that, which are reputable for getting our voice outwards. And we did do some investigative costs around that, so that we would be able to advertise on LinkedIn. That's where we were mainly thinking of. Also, we wanted to be able to share that we were being supported by you in this, and using really good media sources to to generate some of that content. That's where the costs come from, Nicola.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Gina, Rina and Joe. I hope that didn't feel like too much of a boot camp in itself, but really good to have you here and answering those questions. So thanks so much for coming in.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cool. Next up, we have Georgia Ferrari from the Sustainability Trust.
Kia ora koutou.
Hey, Georgie.
Can you see me as well as hear me?
We can.
Great.
Welcome to the meeting. And you also have 10 minutes. And as you can see, we've got a bit of flexibility if councillors continue to indulge me in providing that. So welcome. And yeah, you've got 10 minutes to start with.
Thank you. I've timed my little presentation. It's exactly 5 minutes. So let's see how we go. Kia ora koutou, ko Georgie Ferrari taku ingoa, hei kaiarahi o ki te Ohu Tuitutanga Sustainability Trust. I'm Georgie Ferrari and I'm the Chief Executive of Sustainability Trust, and it's my great pleasure to present to you briefly today about our proposal for a climate action centre here in the CBD of Wellington. Our proposal is for a $95,000 grant from Wellington City Council to support the establishment of the Climate Action Centre, which from here on in I'll refer to as CAC, if you'll indulge me. Sustainability Trust will also contribute $50,000 to this project in the first year, and we'll seek an additional funds of up to about $160,000 from other funders and sponsorship to get the full project off the ground. The CAC will be the first of its kind in Aotearoa, and from what we can see, we think the Southern Hemisphere. Climate change isn't something that will take place in the future. Climate change is here now, and we're feeling the effects now. Extreme weather events, biodiversity loss, rising sea levels, crop failures. These are things that are happening now and will only intensify in the next 10 years. If you're like me, hearing these things will stir an anxious feeling in you, and we're not alone. Climate grief or eco-anxiety, call it what you will, there's a growing recognition that people feel scared and worried about our climate future. So much so that the American Psychiatric Association recognises that climate change is a growing threat to our collective mental health. Our proposed Climate Action Centre will address this eco-anxiety in a positive and optimistic way. Yes, things look bad, but each of us, both individually and collectively as a society, can make a real difference and make some change. Using interactive and participant-driven technologies, our Climate Action Centre will help participants to understand the impact climate change will have on our region, to measure their current carbon emissions, to understand how they can take climate action to reduce their own carbon emissions and why this is vital. They will leave with their top 5 tailored actions to reduce their own carbon footprints. They will learn about Wellington initiatives, both commercial and community-based, that will provide local solutions to our climate challenges. They will engage with movements and advocacies that will help shape a climate-conscious future. And they will know where to get further information about how to take climate action once they leave. The 5 proposed themes that the CAC will focus its interactive displays on decarbonising our transport, including active transport, public transport, and battery electric vehicles. Our food systems, specifically consumption, waste, composting, and cultivation. Conscious consumption, including being alert to greenwashing, which is becoming increasingly more readily seen all over the place. Energy efficient homes, which is something we've been doing for a long time here at the Trust, and making change at a systemic level. While these are our top 5 proposed themes that we want to focus the centre on, we're also open to feedback, and we will consult widely on these to see that we've got the right 5 things where we think Wellingtonians can have the most impact in helping us get first to zero as identified in Te Atakura. We aim to have the CAC open by November 2022, which is probably quite ambitious, but with the caveat that we want our first full year of operation being 2023. We anticipate the centre will operate for at least 7 years through to 2030, with a comprehensive review of the future of the centre taking place in 2026. And we'll aim for the centre to attract 15,000 visitors in its first full year of operation, which isn't over optimistic for us. Last year, our eco centre and eco shop attracted just under 15,000, 14,900 visitors. We hope that 5,000 active users of the interactive action tracking technology that we'll be using will engage with it on a regular basis. And we also hope that at least 1,000 visitors will return annually from previous years, so be repeat customers. We'll measure the impact of the centre through the digital platform that we're proposing to use, which we will develop with a Wellington-based partner. And it will enable us to stay in touch with and track with permission people's progress. This will provide us with a lot of rich data that we can use both on the individual level and on the meta level to attribute the actions that people took from the information they received when they came through the centre. And in terms of qualitative data, we plan to follow a group of participants who have attended the centre on their journey from their baseline behaviours over a 5-year period, tracking their emissions reductions and their behaviour changes, reporting on the difference it's made in their own lives personally and the differences it's made to our city. We can't do this alone, and we've got some really awesome partnerships with lots of great Wellington-based organisations and startups that will help us get the CAC off the ground and be the best that it can be. These include, but aren't limited to, Parakore, Kaibosh, Kai Cycle, Little Yellow Bird, Usefully and the Formery, Innermost Gardens, Kogo, Again, Eco Geek and Thundergrid, the Tip Shop, and Wellington City Council's own awesome waste education team. That's the end of my presentation, and I'm really happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Georgie. That was really interesting. Councillor Day, you have a question.
Kia ora, Georgie. This fund seems like it was made for you guys. What an amazing kaupapa. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just so thorough. I'm just looking back through the application and you've covered off so much. And I can even see my question was around target age group. And I can see you've got some opportunities there for children and, you know, different age groups. I guess one of the things I'm aware of is that often the challenges come for people around this sort of thing when they're transitioning through life, you know, like changing from being a dependent young person to an independent young person, those sorts of things. Have you had any thoughts about that sort of time when people want to change, or, you know, maybe people do want to change their behaviour, but they might need some help to know how to access things? Is that the sort of thing that this could incorporate?
Absolutely. Yeah, we haven't dug down deep into the behaviour change modalities that we might use for different age groups, but we've certainly said we want the centre to appeal to all age ranges, and there's some real experts in this field who can make exhibitions at Te Papa or Zealandia be interesting to children, engaging to young children, and also interesting and informative to their parents who are there with them. So we'll be very much looking at that stuff. But what we know is that young people are probably not the group that we need to shift too much. They're real leaders in this space already. So it'll be just about really tailoring. And if we have an app that has the age of the participant in it, or whatever the digital technology is, we can actually do push notifications at certain points, like thinking of going flatting, remember about the healthy home standards, like we can sort of see where they are in their journey and perhaps indicate or message them at certain times. Yeah,
I think I just say my daughter was sharing with me the other day, she's getting her driver's license and was reflecting to me she doesn't want to buy a car until she can buy an e-vehicle. But, you know, it's the sort of thing, her friends are buying petrol vehicles at the moment. And I guess there is a little bit of trying to become independent, but thinking about how you can do that responsibly. It's a really important opportunity, I guess, to help people see the options and understand how to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And also showing them that Mevo and, Go Get and other car share things are really so easy and such great alternatives to private vehicle ownership now.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you so much.
Startups. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Foond.
Kia ora, Georgie, and thank you, and to the Trust. In my eyes, you already are a climate action centre, just getting more hardcore. My question is around the technology. Is this based on models that are already being used elsewhere?
Good question. Yeah, so we don't want to reinvent wheels. That's not our game. And, technologies and apps are expensive to build and design from scratch. And so we know there's a lot of really good technologies out there. So we've already had some initial conversations with Kogo. They're actually world leaders in some of this stuff. And recognised as such, and they're a Wellington startup, bless them. So we'll be talking to them first and foremost to see if there is an app or a program that we can either use straight off the shelf or modify for our purposes. and they've indicated they're very interested in this project, and there's a lot of alignment with their sustainability planning and, you know, their business plans going forward and what we're talking about.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks, Georgie, so much for coming in. It's always great to have you here and hear the work that you're doing. So thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks. It's lovely to see all your faces. Ka kite.
I'd now like to invite Karen Burgess from Enviro Schools to speak with us. Kia ora, Karen. You know the drill.
Yeah, so I'm just going to try and share my screen and share some slides. So I'll give that a go. And has that happened? Oh, hang on, let's see. So hopefully now you can see my Let's Get Enviro Schools Moving slides. Yep, cool. Okay, so kia ora tātou, ka mihi kia pukeahu te maunga tēnā koe, kia kumutoto te awa tēnā koe, kia tararaki whānui ngā mana whenua tēnā koutou, kia koutou ngā kai kaunihera o pōneke tēnā koutou. I hope you all and your whānau are all staying as well as you can, and acknowledgements to you all for the energy and thought that goes into the tough decisions that you're all making in these tough times. So I forgot to show my beautiful picture of Te Whanganui Atara, which was for that little piece. So at Enviro Schools, we are really excited to see the Wellington City Council Climate Response Team developing and the blueprint for change in Te Atakura. And just listening to the previous presenters, I'm just really excited about this fund. The need for us to change the way we live and work in a way that involves reduced emissions is absolutely urgent. In the situation where we're in, where we've got rising sea levels, environmental degradation and social unrest, requires that we both address that urgent need to reduce emissions and have programs like Enviro Schools that are shifting hearts and minds. And yeah, I guess I just feel that Enviro Schools and the sort of thing that Enviro Schools does need to underpin this climate work. This community network that we have in Enviro Schools is creating future leaders who can respond creatively to the world that lies ahead. And our work is in perfect harmony with Wellington City Council's Children and Young People strategy. In fact, if I was wanting to deliver on that strategy, what I'd be doing is making sure there was a really strong, well-funded Enviro Schools program happening in my city. So I'm speaking today in response to our application to the Climate and Sustainability Fund. But what I really want to address is how we can align the desire that we all have for a well-supported and thriving Enviro Schools network with a fit-for-purpose funding mechanism in Wellington City. So we have been doing this work for over 20 years now, and we know what's needed to create a thriving network. So we know that we want to use a range of different approaches to really well support the existing Enviro Schools. And we know that we want to have the capacity to grow the reach of the network and include new schools and centres as they become interested and tap into their ideas and their new energy. And together, these result in really strong outcomes and multiple examples of action. So this slide shows the Enviro Schools model of collaborative action. And I guess wanted to share that there's increasing support happening at all levels of this model. So at the national level, down the bottom there with Toimata Foundation and Te Mauri Tau, there is the relationship with the Ministry of the Environment is strengthening all the time, and we're getting additional support for our regions. At the regional level, we've got strong support from Greater Wellington Regional Council. My role as regional coordinator has until recently been a contract role, and now is an employee role within the council, which is signifying a significant increase in investment and also incredibly helpful in terms of the development of the program. We've got a regional statement of collaboration between all our local territorial authorities and Greater Wellington, all the funding partners in this region, which clarifies the purpose and goals of support, of supporting Enviro schools. So staff from all of those organisations have got together to develop that document. Greater Wellington are also prepared to help add security for the facilitation roles by exploring the potential for employment roles for the entire local facilitation team if there's sufficient funding and commitment from territorial authorities. So we've got Hutt City Council in there who are considering doubling their funding from Enviro schools next year if they are able to utilise waste levy funding. We've got waste levy funding set to rise progressively, and Toimata are in conversation with Ministry for the Environment about how that funding could be used to grow participation in Enviro schools. And so I think waste levy funding could be a key contributor to Enviro schools funding. On the ground, we've got facilitators who are constantly expanding their ability to effectively engage with schools and centres at varying levels of commitment and make better use of online tools, which increases the potential for wider reach. And we've got these amazing schools and centres who are becoming increasingly environmentally conscious, recognising the importance of constructive action to relieve anxiety in our young people, as well as the importance of growing action competence in our young people. And as a result, lots of incredible action and outcomes. So what's needed to be able to take advantage of all of this is a strong funding base at the local level. So our current situation is our base level funding is significantly below the demand for support. So as we understand it, we've got reasonably secure sort of 60k per annum from the 3-year grants contracts from social and rec and natural environment funds. And that's sufficient for a small part-time contract for a facilitator of between 20 and 25 hours a week. And really, that is only sufficient to enable the facilitator to really work with half of the schools and centres that are currently engaged in Wellington City. So we've got 21 that are being actively facilitated at the moment, and another 21 that are currently in more of a holding pattern. And we'd really like to change that. We think there's a lot of potential in the schools and centres that are in there. And we've also got inquiries from at least 14 more schools and centres in the last year or so saying, look, we want to be part of this. And we're saying we just haven't quite got the capacity yet to engage. So what do we actually need? Well, we think we really need to employ at least 2 people in reasonable sized jobs. We need these jobs to be secure enough to attract and retain good people. And we need a long-term strategic approach that enables us to plan ahead and integrate our work with other strategies. So at the moment, we just don't have that mechanism for growth. So the solution that Wellington City staff saw for us initially was to apply for this targeted contestable fund. And there is, of course, broad alignment between Enviro schools and this Climate and Sustainability Fund. However, as the council staff have pointed out, our application is not highly targeted at reducing emissions. Our program is a holistic one, and with research to show the value of the way that we've been working and what we do, we really want to keep doing that. So we are wondering whether it's the best use of everyone's time right now for us to be trying to bend this program to fit a particular fund. We know that Enviro Schools is effective because it's holistic, and because it's holistic, it's really never going to be a good fit with a targeted contestable fund. And we've seen this over many years across the region and across the motu. So when we're looking for funding to be able to recruit and train staff, contestable funds are not great for that. High administrative cost, high levels of uncertainty, no built-in approach to growth, often oversubscribed. And so they're generally not used by councils around the country for long-term relationships with proven providers like Enviro schools. Wellington City Council is one of the only councils, and it is the only council in this region that funds us in this way. In every other council, we've got baseline funding through operational budgets. And there are very few across the country who are in this situation, and they suffer from the same problems. So just to reiterate, what we need is to be effective is solid base funding. And I just I guess I wanted to point out that there are 5 strategies within Wellington City Council that Enviro Schools delivers on, with that particular alignment with the strategy for children and young people. So I think what I'm asking is that, can we just step back a little bit and look at the broader case for more funding for Enviro Schools at a base level, to be able to really effectively run this network? And I know that doesn't fit well with the systems that Wellington City Council currently has, and I think it's going to require allocating some additional funds to environmental education or to Enviro Schools from other places. So,
Karen, that is the 10 minutes.
Oh, have I overshot? I've got 2 more lines. Here I go.
You go for it. No, go for it.
I just wanted to finish on my last note. So we're in the process of setting up meetings with staff, and what we're asking from you today is to put your support behind us finding a way to fund Enviro Schools through base funding that is fit for purpose. Let's get Enviro Schools moving through strong base funding, and I can assure you that it's going to be worth it. So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thanks so much, Karen. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for that presentation. It was really interesting and useful. And we do have a question from Councillor Day, and I always let Councillor Day ask questions.
I was just going to say, I don't really think I need to. I think you've done a fantastic job there, Karen, and I think it's really important that those conversations continue on. So thank you so much for a thorough presentation. I really appreciate what you do. Thanks.
Kia ora.
Thanks so much for coming in, Karen. That was great.
No worries.
Now we will move on to the Living Wage for Events Fund, and we have Mark Farrer to introduce the report. And I can assure you, Mark, that the Grants Committee are very conscientious and studious, so they have all read it. So really just if there's anything you want to highlight from it, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzsimons. Yeah, just to introduce the paper, this is the first time we're doing this funding round. It's a new fund which was established in the annual plan. It's 3 years of funding, so it's $300,000 a year for 3 years. I think the only comment I'd really make is that the event sector has been heavily impacted by the COVID pandemic, and we might have expected to get a lot more applications in for this fund, but we have the applications that are in front of you. So I just propose to take the paper as read. I know Sophie Jerram's on the call from the City Arts team in case there are any specific questions, but yeah, take the paper as read. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not seeing any questions. So unless, Councillor O'Neill.
There's always one. Thank you, Mark. My partai was just around, from the widget we can see a breakdown of the costs and question about Creative Kate's funding. That's significantly less than the requested amount for the producer phase for Living Wage. So I'm just wondering what's been cut out, and confirming with you that no wages are a part of what's been withdrawn.
No, so Kate made a number of applications that we decided to group as one. So, I mean, I think she did the right thing in that there were lots of different events that she was asking for funding for. And we've worked through that with Kate and taken out some of the other costs that she had included. So, as you know, when a producer puts on a show, it's usually them that get paid last. So she's made some very conservative predictions around box office income given COVID-19 and limited audience sizes. So Kate seems happy with our recommendation, and Yvonne in my team has been talking to her about that. So we just took other costs out. The idea of the fund was to top up applicants with funding to a level. So we just took other things out of that budget.
Okay, so just there's no wages removed, it's just other costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
And Councillor Foon.
Thanks, Mark. I think you may have just answered my question, but I just wouldn't mind re-clarification on that. So is part of the fund to top up wages to meet the living wage standard?
So the principle of the fund was to lift the pay of the lowest paid workers who were involved in our sort of event sector. And you may recall from the December meeting that we broadened that to include artists and performers and arts practitioners within that. And within the application process, we asked for people to show the difference between what they would be getting paid and what the living wage is. And really what has happened in these applications is lots of these, and lots of them are from arts groups. Clearly, artists work for a lot more hours than they actually get paid. So most of the cases that are being made here are, we're just not funded enough, either through box office or through grant funding or arts funding, to get a living wage. I mean, it's okay, the performers might get paid when they're actually performing, but they need to develop their work. So this is what you're largely seeing here in these applications.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sophie. I'll now hand over to Councillor Matthews to introduce the paper.
Kia ora koutou. Just very briefly, I would like to thank officers for pivoting with this fund. It's really unfortunate that, given the enthusiasm which the fund was met by the likes of Cuba Duper and the Newtown Festival, there would have been some amazing candidates in that space, but it's exciting anyway to be promoting the living wage, to be making sure that artists are paid fairly, and to raise the profile of the living wage within our city and within our events. So, and I also just want to thank the Living Wage Movement for their continued cooperation on this. And yeah, just commend the fund and just, anything that we can do to help promote a fair and living wage in our city and meet that commitment to be a living wage capital. Thank you.
And I'll second it. And I just wanted to start by thanking Councillor Matthews for her leadership on this. She's been involved in the living wage before there even was a living wage movement, right from the very beginning. And I think that this fund really is about wages, but it's also about a change in culture towards particularly the arts, but particularly workers in Wellington, and making Wellington a genuinely living wage capital. So are there any other speakers? If not, and you're happy not to have a right of reply on that basis, Councillor Matthews, I'll put the resolution then. All those in favour, please tick green. Lovely, that's carried unanimously. Thanks, everybody. The next paper is the Climate and Sustainability Fund. Now I've got Alison Howard and Mark Farrer, and I'll just repeat what I said before, which is that the Grants Committee is the most studious committee, and everybody reads their papers. So just really, if you just have any introductory comments, that would be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzsimons. Yeah, again, this is the first time we're doing this fund. It's a new fund, very exciting, and we moved fairly fast with this one. So the closing date was the 10th of February. There is another round a bit later, closing at the end of this month. So yeah, Alison's on the line, and I've got Raven in the call as well if there are any questions. I don't know, Alison, whether you want to make any opening comments.
No, I've read the paper. So yeah, so we've refreshed your memory as to the purpose and the criteria of the fund and our recommendations as to where we can allocate funds in this first round. So I'm really interested to hear your feedback on that.
Thanks so much. And we do have a few questions. First of all, Councillor Foon.
Mine was on the Enviro Schools application, and I see that you've got it on hold for more work. But can you just explain a little bit more about, from your perspective, the reasoning around that?
I think there are a couple of things that float in my mind. I think Karen makes the excellent point that it's really hard to shoehorn Enviro schools into the different contestable funds that we have available. It doesn't fit in waste levy very well. It doesn't fit in our natural capital very well. It doesn't fit in social and recreation very well. It certainly doesn't fit in this fund very well. And that it's unfortunate. I'm a big fan of Enviro schools, and they didn't attempt to write an application that met the fund criteria, and their program isn't really about climate action. I see Enviro schools, in fact, much more focused on the ecological emergency. And as you and I have discussed before, Councillor Foon, we don't really have the same high-level strategy for the ecological emergency that we do for the climate emergency. And you could imagine that out of such a strategy, you might get a dedicated fund that's about initiatives to address the ecological emergency. I thought Karen's suggestion on, how do we operationalise the funding support for Enviro schools was a good one. And that is something that you as councillors have influence over in a way that I as an officer perhaps don't. So I couldn't possibly make another comment on that. But the main reason why we put the hold on it to postpone this conversation was to allow for time for Karen's very good points to kind of be, I guess, worked through in terms of how, if councillors are strongly supportive of this and getting this funding, how will we do that? Like, what's the best possible way to do that? And Mark made the very good point that the funding we already give them is being reviewed in May. And so we could time this conversation better to look at all of the funds that they possibly contribute to and kind of and do it, have one conversation about it, do it properly, and really kind of nut out that conversation then.
So technical question, do we need to move an amendment today to start the ball rolling on that?
Already on it.
Yay, okay. I'll hand over to Councillor Day then.
Just to add that in the paper we do say that they are a more discussion to be had application. So you can always feel free to add amendments, but we have already put that into the paper for us to discuss it more fulsomely in May.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day, I will send the amendment through to Emily now.
I do just have a quick question around that, thank you. Just how we make sure that that comes back somewhere so that we don't sort of just lose the momentum, because obviously having a fund to apply to means that there's a point where a decision is made and something happens, and what would be a shame is if this kind of just falls into the difficult space. Mark.
Through the chair, the Enviro schools, along with sort of 60 other organisations, are applying for multi-year funding, and that's on the agenda for the May the 17th meeting. So obviously they and all the arts organisations and all the other social organisations are making applications, and they'll come to you on the 17th of May. So they're one of many organisations whose 3-year contracts are in their final year this year. So that was part of the logic of the recommendation was, that 60,000 is will be on the table in terms of a discussion, so they can apply. And I discussed with Karen last week, they can apply for more money at that point, and that's the point at which we can discuss that. And obviously this will be at the same, the climate fund will be at the same meeting as well. Yeah. So it'll happen at the same time.
I guess the question is if it's really appropriate to continue with a 3-year funding cycle, or whether we need to be looking at something like other councils are doing, which is actually trying to embed it, a bit like Karen's role is actually based in the regional council. Should we be doing the same for our Enviro schools facilitators? And I don't know how to make sure that that happens, whether that still works with that process.
I think that would need to be a process that would probably be outside the realm of our grants, because we've only got the grants funding we've got. So that would need to be a discussion as part of the annual plan / long-term plan, unless there's operational funding, but I doubt whether there would be. But we can certainly pick that up with Sarah Murray and their team, because Elspeth in Sarah's team manages the relationship with Enviro School. So I think, as Alison said, we just need a little bit more time to try and work out how we can do this. And of course, I would say that all those organisations that will be applying for multi-year funding equally probably all want a solid base to their funding. So, you know, it's not an unusual thing to hear, really.
Just another question too, this is about the Chamber of Commerce application, and just looking at one of the days we'll have someone from council speaking at it, and I just wonder how that works, given that we're funding, and you know, what does that tangle us up a little bit, or how is that being managed?
So Jenna asked me if I could speak from the perspective that I've been a corporate sustainability manager and a consultant in corporate sustainability. I really don't care. The value of having me speak is that it's free, so it kind of adds to the financial viability of their sustainability bootcamp. But there are plenty of other people in Wellington equally as qualified as myself who could fill the same slot. There are many corporate sustainability background people who could do that. So yeah, I would take that as a provisional piece.
Thank you. That does explain it. Look, that sort of didn't make quite so much sense until I heard that you'd be doing it obviously as a gift. Yeah,
it's a gift. Oh yes, I certainly am not getting paid.
It's really hard to tell when you look at those things. You can't sort of tell how that will work. Thank you.
Sorry, no, I do not get paid for that kind of contribution. I consider that just part of trying to address the climate emergency. You pay me enough. It's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Day. Councillor Phone.
This might be slightly awkward, and Chair, please feel free to do your job if you need to, but I must say I am questioning the Chamber's request in this fund when there is a contradiction in the way the council is trying to move toward a zero carbon future. So I guess I'm questioning, is there a conflict of interest? Is there any advice that officers have? I guess it's there, so that's saying that you are putting it forward to us for a decision. But yeah, is there any other way you could advise us on this situation that's not political?
Yeah. Let me give it a stab. This came up in our conversation with Councillor Fitzsimmons and Councillor O'Neill when we were doing the chair's briefing. I'll give you a parable so that I'm not giving you a political answer. But when I went to work at Meridian as their head of sustainability, there was a lot of negative chitter chatter about Z Energy. And how could Z talk about having a sustainable future or being a sustainable business when their core business model is selling petrol, and how awful that was, and greenwashing, and how terrible they were. And I really challenged my colleagues, because I'm like, Z Energy is one of the major sellers of petrol. And if you have them on board trying to transition, trying to figure out what the future of fuel is in New Zealand, that's a better outcome than having them actively opposing everything. So my personal view of this kind of application from an organisation like the Chamber of Commerce is, oh my God, how things have changed. Because I could not imagine them putting forward this kind of proposal 10, 15 years ago. And it is a beautiful thing. I desperately want them to do this. And I actually think that if you have a Chamber of Commerce running a sustainability bootcamp and encouraging their members to think about their carbon footprint, it makes it much harder for them to take policy positions that actively oppose climate action initiatives around the city. That is my personal view.
Fabulous parable. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any other questions? No? Great. All right. Councillor Day is going to introduce this paper with the amended substantive, which is just she's putting in her what she raised before. So hopefully that can pop up. Yeah, there we go. Councillor Day, over to you.
Cool. I was just checking that wording. Yes, so firstly I want to start by thanking the officers for their work on this and also the work of the panel. It's great to see how this is getting underway and exciting to see that we are starting to actually have some ways of addressing the goals of Te Atakura. So yeah, exciting to be able to agree to some grants today. Really encouraging to hear the kōrero from Georgie from the Sustainability Trust. It really does feel like that's exactly what this fund is trying to achieve in helping people with those challenging transitions to lower our carbon impacts. I do have to say I share similar concerns to Councillor Foon on the Chamber of Commerce application. I do think it's tricky to be giving money to an organisation that is opposing some of our very strong ways of addressing climate change. So yeah, I guess I take on board what Alison said around, you know, bringing people into the circle, and I think it will be interesting to see if that does start to have an impact. And I hope that it does, because I think that actually we have to be able to look broader than just what we know right now, and we have to be able to be bold, and that's what Let's Get Wellington Moving is trying to do. Enviro schools, I was very keen to give more funding today, but it's been helpful hearing what Karen said during her presentation, and I'm really pleased that Karen, that you didn't try and make the application fit the fund, because actually it's important that Enviro Schools stays true to what it does, because having seen firsthand the impacts of Enviro Schools, and I know that other councillors have, Councillor Matthews definitely has seen it firsthand, and Councillor Foon, that Enviro Schools has a massive impact. And actually if we're looking at the goals of Te Atakura, and actually I think it does meet climate change goals as well, because actually we're empowering young people to learn how to turn their anxieties and their concerns about the future and the impacts of climate change into action. Actually, the best thing we can do to support people who are really struggling with feeling overwhelmed with it is having things that they can do. And what we're seeing is young people coming through and getting involved in kaupapa like we've seen with the climate march and all the other things that have been happening, which have been led by young people. So we know that actually knowledge is power, and it leads to often some quite good creative ways of solving the challenges that we face. I think it would be good to see the conversation happening in a way that doesn't limit Enviro Schools to trying to fit to funds, because it is a unique provision in this city, and I think it does something different to what a lot of the organisations do that we fund. And people might say, you know, why don't teachers just do this? Can tell you as a teacher that this is the sort of thing that you just don't have time to do the research on, and actually it's really powerful having other people come to your school and share their knowledge and their expertise with young people and inspire them. You know, you do see children get quite excited about the concepts that are being shared with them, and they feel like they're connecting to something much bigger than just what's happening right on their front doorstep. So I think, you know, we do need to think about how we can make this work better for Enviro Schools. It's interesting to hear that most other councils are actually doing it differently to us. So I think we need to take that quite seriously. And I'm pleased that we've got that amendment in, but we will need to keep thinking about how we can try and embed that in a more sustainable way. I think that's enough said now, and I'm not sure who's seconding. Councillor Foon?
Councillor Foon, you can second. Would you like to speak?
I think Councillor Day's done an amazing job, but I do just want to express what a joy both of these grants, seeing them here and seeing them starting to work and go into the community, and particularly this one for me, just starting to see the dots connect up. And I do respect the chamber and the really great little package that they've put together for businesses. And I think that what we're seeing here is a way to reach more diverse communities that wouldn't actually come to this type of kaupapa naturally. So yeah, it's also good to see the churches in there, and just things like the Greenback Limited. It's just really exciting having a place for these initiatives to manifest in this space. But yes, so I would just like to thank all the staff, and yeah, just really, I must say that having the panel view this really gave me a lot of comfort. So thank you very, very much to the team for putting that panel together, and I feel confident to support knowing that they have had their very experienced eyes over this. So that's enough from me. Thank you.
And Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. I just briefly wanted to speak to this paper as it came up. We had a really extensive discussion in the pre-briefing. But I guess as a member of a body that is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, as somebody who is an Eastern Ward resident and lives 100 metres from Cobham Drive, as a young person who is consistently fighting with groups of young people to see climate actions, I have been hurt and let down and brokenhearted, I guess, on a number of actions, but I am comforted today by the words of Jenna and the words of our officers and the advice we've received around the cumulative opportunity of change. And I really just wanted to mihi to Jenna, who spoke to us today, and all her amazing work. It looks like an incredible program. And to be honest, it gives me a greater deal of confidence to see a young wahine leading this work, because I know that she will be fresh and challenging to our structures. But just to kind of, I guess, lay it on the table that we have a really awesome opportunity, and I would love to see the Chamber of Commerce work with their members to educate them. And I do believe that one of the first steps to climate action is education. So that's why I'm happy to support this, in particular, a large grant going as a part of this fund. And I guess to also acknowledge Councillor Panna and Councillor Paul for their mahi and mahi setting this stuff up as well.
Cool, thanks, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Day, would you like a right of reply?
Just something very briefly, I did just want to say that because as a response to what Councillor Foon said around the Chamber's application, I do want to say that I think that there's some really good opportunities in what I've read that will happen through that process. But I would love to hear back as a result of that, I guess, when future applications come, because I hope that it will be successful and that they potentially will, that they are actually engaging with organisations that wouldn't normally and that will be challenging themselves, because sometimes with these sorts of things you tend to get the people who are already on that journey who engage, but it'll be really good to hear a little bit about people who might be being very challenged by that and are open to that. So really happy to support all of these applications, and thank you everybody for the time you put into all of it. Thanks
folks. Now we vote. Great, that's carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Now, just want to get an indication, are there any questions on the forward program or actions tracking? I noticed they're pretty uncontroversial, I anticipate. All right, I move that we'll deal with those two together. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Matthews. So I'll put that to a vote. Please vote. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thanks everybody for your participation and beautiful constructive attendance. And I'll say the closing karakia. Unu here, ki te uru tapunui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua. E te ara takatū. Koia rā I rongo whakaria a ki runga. Kia wātia, ai rā kua wātia. Thanks everyone. Thanks, officers. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Very efficient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.